a good enough reason for us to come in. And there's a criteria. You base your criteria on knowledge and experience, not what's right as far as what the politicians think that you should do. We have many times to where we have situations that you'll go to a village board meeting prior to them okaying the expense of a removal program, and they'll start to give you stipulations and limit your tools. So it's very important that you don't let them do that. What you know about coyote and animal behavior is something that the politicians don't know, but they try to let you, they'll read some leaflet and try to tell you that they do know it. One of the things that we find in our area is that if a dog is attacked between the months of September and December, we want to pay close attention for the possibility of a feeder. We necropsy our animals, so we found that during that particular period of time in our area, now this might not be the same in California, but in the Midwest, we certainly start to look for a feeder if they're starting to become attacks. We like to try to pattern that and keep a close eye on that. So as you saw earlier, we institute the sightings page, and we had to do that because there was absolutely nobody that was taking the correct information that would help us from a trapping standpoint or removal. We just didn't get the information that we needed. So we instituted the sightings page, and again, the village will link their website to our sightings page, so when there is a sighting, we can look at it. When there's an attack, we can see it, and then we go from there. And you saw from our administrative side of the page that we're able to see different things by the amount of sightings, the times, the dates, the directions that they travel. Again, like I told you, you might see one coyote's reported at 9:15 in one spot and at 9:30 in another spot, 9:45, and they're all on the same street and he's all going west. So that gives you a good idea, a good indication of where to look. And again, like I said about the sightings page, we can send a monthly report to any zip code in the United States. Okay, this is where it's going to get interesting for you guys. Once we've got them documented, we see where the attacks are on the Google map. Then we start to back up by the different colors of the pins, like red being an attack on a dog, yellow being a manged animal, and then we'll start to move back and forth by using the zoom tool to see if we can find an area that will be holding the coyotes during the day. The cameras that we use are HCO Spartan 3G cameras. They're a cellular-based camera, and they use a SIM card. We use AT&T. You get 1,000 pictures for $10 a month. The pictures come to you as a text and can also come to you as an email. These are absolutely critical. I would never, ever set a trap where I live or in an urban area without the use of these cameras. I just wouldn't do it. We do approximately 2 weeks, sometimes 20, 30 hours of surveillance prior to setting a trap to begin with. But as soon as we see an animal, once we do set the trap and the cameras are on it, we know within 30 seconds that that animal is caught because we have a picture sent to our cell phone. We can also add addresses to it. So like we'll add the chief of police, we'll add the animal control officer, we'll add the dispatcher for the police department, and we will add those pictures so that they go to their emails and they know immediately also. Now what that does is in an urban situation, a lot of times these coyotes will get caught in the daytime, sometimes 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, and they might be near a school. It's important that we have an officer at the trap site waiting for us to arrive so that there's no mishaps or anybody walks up to that coyote while he might be in a trap. Now, the thing about the cameras is you can set the cameras up to take a picture once every hour. You can have them set up where they take a picture every 30 seconds, and those pictures are immediately sent to your cell phone and to your emails. The problem when you do this, I want to know usually I have mine set a minute apart so I can burst it and see what the coyote's doing. The problem with this is when you send it to the mayor or the village officials and they're waking up in the middle of the night and they're getting 40 pictures, they call you up and say, get me off this thing now, because there's no way that they can get any sleep whatsoever. Because the cameras are going off all night, whether they're raccoons, possums, skunks, deer. It's just amazing. So you have to be very careful. If you're going to set the cameras up for a lot of pictures in an hour, like one every 5 minutes, you don't want to, at that point, you don't want to forward them to the police departments. In other words, once the police department knows there's a coyote that's been captured, they usually send an officer to the site. If it's an animal control officer, if it's during the day, or if it's a regular police officer. So these cameras are absolutely essential in what we do as far as urban coyote control. It also gives us the opportunity to pattern animals and make sure that we're trying to catch the exact animal that is causing the problem. And you say, how does that work? Well, sometimes on the sightings page, you'll get one that's a limp. Well, on the video portion, we use two cameras. We use one that sends a picture immediately to our cell phone. We use another camera that takes a video of the whole process. So we have him working the set. We have him getting caught. We have him after he got caught. We have pictures of this animal not only in stills, but we also have it on video. Very important. It's very important to try to identify and make sure that we're catching the animal that's causing the problem. And that sometimes can be showing the picture to the homeowner, even though I know that a lot of coyotes look alike. Some of the homeowners will say that's absolutely him and you know that it's not. But some of them will look at it and say, I'm pretty sure that that looks like the one size-wise and color with the color markings, that was the one that attacked our dog. Okay? Here's a prime example of one of the still shots, and this is our pre-scouting. So what we do, if you can look at this is kind of unique because here it says 11:37:02. So it was 11:30, almost noon, and this coyote was here every single day between 11 and 12. So we watched this coyote, and we watched him every single day for maybe a week, maybe two. We dug our presets. We put bait in a hole, and we put some. One time we put a squirrel in there. One time we put some coyote glands and urine. And our goal was to make sure that we did not have any non-targets in the area, and we certainly didn't have raccoons, possums, skunks, or more importantly, somebody that's not watching their pet. There's people that don't take care of their kids, let alone their dogs. So we have to be careful that we don't catch somebody's dog. So if we're using glands and urine, most often, if there is a stray dog in the area, we get a picture of that dog. At that point, that picture is distributed to all the local officers, to the animal control department, to anybody that's involved in this project. At that point, they do not get a trap until we are absolutely assured that that animal has been found, the person has either been sighted, or we know for sure that that animal is not going to come back again, whether they had a talk with the guy or whatever they did. They're not going to get a trap until that happens. Now, this particular case, this particular coyote had killed a dog at 11 o'clock in the afternoon or 11 o'clock in the morning, and it was a 10-year-old girl that was walking her dog, and her house is right on the other side of this green of the grass, and she was walking her dog, and the coyote killed her dog while she was walking it on a leash, and this girl was 11 years old. And she was absolutely devastated. I mean, I don't know if there's any studies. I know there's a lot of studies about the coyotes, how they feel. I would love to see somebody talk to that girl 10 years from now and find out exactly what she feels like. Because this girl was absolutely terrified. So what we did is, once we were comfortable that there were no stray dogs in the area, we were pretty comfortable that that was the one. She got a pretty good look at it for quite a long time, and so did her parents. And they had seen this coyote on a daily basis at this particular time. So we're pretty sure that that was the coyote. So what we did then was we set a trap. Now, for the guys that are trapping out here, I don't know if you could see in the back, but backing meant absolutely nothing to this coyote. He went right through the backing. The hole was on this side of the tree. But what we did was we patterned him, we watched him, and finally when we felt comfortable enough that we were in a safe place, we weren't going to catch a dog, we weren't going to catch a cat, and right now he's working in the hole pulling what's remnants of a squirrel out. And that's what we chose to do. So at that point, we did set the trap. And you'll see, finally he'll work, and we back-footed him because at this particular time, he's been caught, but at this particular time, he's biting at the trap. Because I knew that coyote was coming between 11 and 12, I was 2 blocks away drinking coffee when I set the trap that day, and I was 2 blocks away. And I said, okay, I'm going to wait here, and I'm going to see what happens. And in 40 minutes, that coyote came back, and I had him. So I was within 10 minutes of where that coyote was. I'm not so sure he didn't know I was there when I set the trap. In other words, here's another non-target thing. You know, we did the thing with the chicken coops, like she was saying. They made chickens legal, and here's this guy's brown lab, and he wanted the coyotes gone, and the next-door neighbor let his dog out. And, of course, when you asked him, he said, oh, no, there's absolutely no way. There's no stray dogs around here. Everybody watches their pets. Well, when you send him this picture, he has to say, wait a minute, why is Hercules in my yard? But had I set a trap, Hercules would have been caught. And now you have a big issue because now you've got the neighbors mad at each other, and you know, even though the traps don't harm the animals, these are the exact same tools that we're using to collar the animals. So why would you harm the very animal that you're trying to study? It makes no sense, but people like to think that. Okay, so finding suspected habitat. Once we find a spot where we're pretty confident, we're going to look to where the coyotes are at during the day. We're going to try to find out little spots. Maybe it's a golf course. Maybe it's a baseball field. Maybe it's somebody's shed. I know in the wintertime in Chicago, people go to Florida for the winter, or they come to Arizona. What we found is coyotes like to go under decks where people winter. So if somebody goes to their snowbirds and they leave, their house is quiet. Their yard's quiet. And we've found that they have adapted to using the decks of places where people are on vacation and don't come back till March. So when they come back and then they have pups, now all of a sudden they've got pups under the deck and the people come back and, we have issues. So these are suspected areas. Another thing that we've done recently is we've looked at all the homes that have been foreclosed on, and people have just left their homes. Well, when we find those areas that are overgrown, those are the first places we look for when we start seeing suspected attacks. So we looked at the sighting page. We saw attacks in a certain area. I'll do usually a half a square mile, and I'll look for any homes that were foreclosed on or anybody that might possibly be leaving for the winter. And the police usually have notice of people that are leaving from the winter because they want them to check their houses once in a while. So we usually have a list of where we can look for these coyotes. And a lot of times you get to a spot where somebody has foreclosed on a home or they just walked away from it, and you start to see tracks, and you start to see, sign that the coyotes are there, droppings, things that stick out. And once we do that, we find out who the property is and we access permission to get in there, and we do what we have to do. Another thing is landfills, like I told you before, easements, forest preserve. The area that around Chicago has 700,000 acres of forest preserve. So these areas can breed populations, but they can't sustain them. So the coyotes have to go someplace. One of the studies that is in that area, the Cook County study in particular, I trained all those guys to trap those coyotes in Cook County, every single one of them. As a matter of fact, the first probably 100 coyotes I trapped myself for them. However, a lot of those coyotes were trapped in the forest preserve and not on private property. When I get a call, the coyote has already become a problem. He doesn't go to the safety of the forest preserve. He's already living under a deck where he's coming in close proximity of people where he becomes a problem. So once they call me when a dog has been attacked, it's usually, I think they're two separate groups of animals. The forest preserve coyotes, when you look at their droppings and you look at the contents of what they're eating deer, they're eating rabbit, they're eating mice, they're eating what they're supposed to eat. But the coyotes in the urban areas, the ones that I deal with, the habituated animals that I'm dealing with, many, many times have dog food. Many times have things that they shouldn't have, as you'll see real soon. Another thing I said is it's real important, especially in the mange, to look for compost piles. The villages like to take wood chips and stuff like that, and they bring their wood chips and they pile them up. They grind the trees up and they put these big mounds of wood chips so that in the summertime people can use it for landscaping because they don't know what to do with the tree branches. Well, the mange coyotes during the cold will tunnel into there because there's heat in there. And you can get a coyote with stage 4 mange that absolutely lives through a 20 below zero winter. I mean, you could have 20 below zero for 2-3 weeks in a row, and that coyote still lives, and you're shaking your head. I mean, I get a guy calls me, and he says, I saw a stage, he reported it to the website, and he says, this coyote was, it was 21 below zero last night, and this coyote was out, but he doesn't have any fur at all. And I'm thinking, man, why didn't this thing die? So we had a fresh snow, and I went and tracked that coyote right to the compost pile. And I knew the compost pile was probably about a quarter of a mile from where the call came from, where the sighting came from. So I went over there and I looked, and he actually tunneled in, and I jumped on top of the pile and flushed him out like a rabbit, like you would a brush pile, which, 25 years ago, that just never happened. We just didn't have coyotes like we have now. We didn't have these problems. I trapped since I was 13 years old. 1978 was the first time I saw a coyote anywhere near Chicago. And that's because they were killing all my fox while they were in the trap. And back then I was getting 125 for a fox. I was livid. I caught 251 of them in 21 days. That was cutting into my payroll there. So another thing that you need to look for is don't go looking for coyotes 3-4 miles away. They're not going to find them. That's not the ones that are causing a problem. In the urban area, there's so much food availability, which also sometimes questions when Justin was talking about the coyotes in Los Angeles walking by a dog and walking by a cat and not doing anything. I honestly think some of these coyotes are so full they don't want to eat anymore. I mean, I routinely will see them, one work in the bushes by the houses, and the other one's on the sidewalk, and when he jumps the rabbit, the one on the sidewalk grabs him. So these coyotes have adapted very well, and they're well fed in the suburban areas. It's not like they have to work really hard. Otherwise, a half a square mile could not sustain that whole group of animals. So we're starting to see this more and more, and larger groups in smaller areas than we ever did before. So once we do find a spot that we think the coyotes are at, either by reading the sign or looking at satellite images, then we naturally go to the proper authorities that we need to talk to get permission to go in there and remove the animals. Okay, once they're located, you want to try to find out if they're a family, if they're a pair, or a solitary animal. Believe it or not, I do get a lot of problems with solitary animals. You would think they're always pairs. It's not necessarily the fact. Sometimes we have solitary animals that cause just as many problems as a group does. We look for the droppings, and the first thing we look for the droppings is we want to make sure that there's no dog or cat food in them or domestic food. Great example. One suburb, there was a little tiny backyard that there was no reason in the world that these coyotes should be there every night. There was just nothing there for them to be there. There was no cover. There was nothing. Why were they in that backyard? I caught the coyote. We did a necropsy. The coyote was full of pork chops. He was full of pork chops. So I talked to the media, and the media said, well, what's going on? I said, well, this coyote was full of pork chops. Well, whoever was feeding that animal must have read the article, because I haven't been back there in 10 years. They said, wait a minute, I can't be feeding. Somebody's getting close to me here. Somebody's figuring out that I fed this thing pork chops, whether they emptied their freezer or whatever. So you have to be very careful and look very carefully at droppings. Try not to put them in your pocket when you go home, because you'll forget. They go in the laundry. Don't do that. Get in a lot of trouble for that. Again, inspect the area for non-targets. This is big, because what people don't understand, if you stay out of a suburb in any type of prairie path or any jogging path, and you stay out there at between 6 and 8 in the morning and watch the people that are letting their dogs out before they go to work, and watch how many dogs are off the leash, it is unbelievable. And the police department will say, well, don't worry, we have a leash law. Well, you have a leash law, but nobody follows it and nobody does anything about it. So these coyotes, or these dogs that are off a leash, if you're going to set a trap anywhere near that area, you're going to catch a dog. Now, I haven't caught a dog in 35 years because of the diligence that I do prior to setting a trap. 20 hours of surveillance is minimum. If you don't do 20 hours of surveillance, especially early in the morning, you're going to catch a dog. And, that stops the program faster than anything. If you have a coyote removal program for a village and you're trying to target a specific pair or group of animals and you catch a dog, that party just ended. You're finished. Everything just got closed down, period. So it's really important to understand that you have to make sure prior to setting a trap, you have to do your homework. You don't do your homework, you're going to mess it up. Again, the cameras are just absolutely imperative. They tell me everything. They tell me people that shouldn't be there. They tell me stuff that you could never imagine. And I don't have a problem with cameras getting stolen. I've lost one in probably 20 years. Now, I started with the Smart Scouter, and that technology got outdated. Then I went to the Pandas, which was HCO's next best one. Then the Pandas got outdated, and now I'm with the 3Gs, which usually within 4 seconds of the picture being taken, it's on my phone. You can zoom it. You can do anything you want. Then you can text the camera to take another picture. So you can text that camera to take a picture anytime you choose. So if it's windy and the leaves are moving and the camera's going off, you can turn the sensitivity off until the wind stops. Then you can text it back and turn the sensitivity back on. So the amount of control that you have with the electronics today is absolutely phenomenal. And I would not even consider doing this job. I would never set a trap without the technology that we have. Okay, choosing the right tools. This is going to get a little bit dicey. To the urban area, some people, especially where we live in an area where it'll thaw at night, or it'll freeze at night and it'll thaw during the day, and anybody that's used foothold traps for any extent of time knows that that's the trapper's biggest nightmare. One of the things that we constantly do is we use wax sand so that, our traps function at all times, because when you watch a coyote on the camera at your trap and the trap doesn't go off, you might as well just get up, because you're not going to sleep the rest of the night anyway, because it's already just bothered you to the point that why didn't he get caught? So the cameras, you don't get any sleep with the cameras, period. So, okay, calling is very effective, but there's a lot of villages don't let you discharge. Calling works really well if you're in semi-rural areas or areas that are just outside of village limits or unincorporated. Calling works good for one coyote, maybe two. After that, if they're not the two that you're targeting, it's not going to be effective. I'm not going to say you're not going to call in a coyote, but it might not be the coyote that you're trying to pursue. So to me, traps are a lot more effective at that. You always want to make sure that if you're going to shoot, that you're using the right caliber. We've specialized in. We've actually developed a couple of different tools at the University of Nebraska's Urban Coyote Workshop. We taught a class just on the right guns to use. One was a Metro gun, which is a 36-inch barrel that fits into the choke tube of a Remington 870, and we load subsonically with number 4 buck, and they're about 900 feet per second, so there is no supersonic crack, and also the gas is all vented from the barrel. So basically it's a 12 gauge. It's good to 40 yards. It's very safe, which is why I would consider a shotgun for use, is because you don't have to worry about it going 300 yards. You don't have to worry about it skipping. Shotgun is a very safe tool, and it's worked very well for multiple coyotes that might be coming in. And we load it with, for you guys that are actually doing the work, I'll give you the formula, so get your pens ready. It's we use a Fiocchi straight hull with a 209 primer. We use 13.5 grains of Clay's powder with a 1.2 S wad. And we use number 4 buck, and there's 19 to 20 pellets in that. Very effective up to 35 yards. Another thing about shooting, if you're going to be in an area where you do shoot, sometimes if you're on a quarter-acre lot, how in the world could you possibly guarantee that that coyote's not going to go into the neighbor's yard who might not want the coyote dead or running down the street? So with the Metro gun, it's very effective. Another gun that we use is a 572 Remington pump, and that is also used with a 60 grain Aguila bullet, which is 60 grains of lead in a 22, and it's very good for one-shot kills. It's very humane. The coyotes don't move anywhere. It's a great bullet. Hesitant unless you had a very good background. You want to make sure that you have something that, in case you were to miss, that bullet, because it's a 22, could certainly skip. So if shooting's something that you want to do, you want to make sure that everything is safe. Again, the naked dirt holes. I actually catch a lot of coyotes with naked dirt holes. I start the dirt hole with glands and urine, and I get the coyote to work the set. And if there's a stray dog, naturally, I've got him on the camera, and then everything comes to a halt until we get that issue ratified. A lot of times in our area, we have such a high density of raccoons and possums and non-target animals, it's almost impossible to put anything in a hole without catching a raccoon. It's just a skunk, a raccoon, or a possum. Our densities are probably 10 times what they should be, maybe 100 times what they should be. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll dig 2 holes, and I'll put bait in both of those holes, and then about 15 feet away to the back, I'll just dig a hole with nothing in front of it. So the coons and the possums and the skunks will work the holes that have the bait in it, but the coyote, because the way he is, he has to go look in the other hole anyway, even though there's nothing in it. And that's usually how I end up catching the coyote without catching non-targets. So naked dirt holes are a great way to do it. If you're nervous about non-targets, that would be a great way to do it. Okay, foothold traps in action. Now, once again, I want you to understand this. These are the exact same tools that we use to collar the animals. So these animals, when the coyote gets caught, certainly he's going to bite at the trap. That's what they do. But this coyote, our response time is so quick, that coyote is never in the trap for over 60 minutes. Never. Our response time is just that good. Most of the time it's 15, 18 minutes. But he's never in the trap for over that. So this is another, it was really wet, and this was a squirrel that was in a hole. Now the whole time the trap is here. Okay, the plastic tube on the left, it was raining so much that we put some bait in that plastic tube. Now I had this camera up for actually almost a month, and I never saw anything other than the coyotes work the set. I never saw a dog, never saw a raccoon, never saw a skunk. So I felt pretty confident that we'd be okay, but I had some bait in that tube. But he got greedy, so he got the squirrel out of the hole, which the squirrel works really well because it really isn't going to attract too much. A raccoon really isn't interested in a squirrel. But the coyote has to have it. And I think it's half the point is once he's in the hole, he can't get him out. Okay, boom. Now again, our response time here was literally minutes. So this coyote was euthanized and out of the trap very quickly. Response time matters. Trappers have been at the forefront of creating equipment that benefits the animal. I mean, who came up with laminated jaws on a trap? Trappers did. These cameras, this is the standard that everybody should be using, including researchers. There should be no more than 60-minute response time on any time you set a trap, my opinion. 60-minute or less. We haven't lost, when we collared them, we have not had one death due to capture myopathy. Not one. The reason is we're there so fast that those coyotes don't have a chance to get that stressed out or burnt out and wear their muscles down where they're fighting. This also eliminates the need to give the animals high dosage of antibiotics. One of the things that's interesting is when somebody catches a coyote, the first thing they do is they pump this thing full of antibiotics. Well, how are you supposed to do a study and find out if the animal's really doing good when you kill all the things that are bothering them? So we don't believe in that. But anyway, this is a standard that I believe we should all be using. This was that same area. If you notice, this was that high school that I showed you earlier right there. Okay, we had 3 attacks on dogs, and we had a snow hill in this park right there that when the kids were going down at the end of the slide, the coyotes were at the bottom of the snow hill. And the parents were really upset. They tried to shoo the coyote away. The coyote would run 10 feet. He'd come back and he'd sit at the bottom of the snow hill. Not good. After 12 days of trapping, that's what it looked like. So if somebody tells me that trapping doesn't work, after 35 years of doing this, I beg to differ. So trapping works. And when you can remove problem animals, and just the problem animals, nobody wants to remove all the coyotes. But when you remove a problem coyote, what you're doing is you're stopping a problem that could really turn into a nightmare. I mean, if a coyote bites a kid, they're going to want all the coyotes dead. If you really like the coyotes, take the bad ones out and leave it. Don't worry about it. Once you take the bad ones out, the rest of them are fine. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4, but not very often. Mostly if I take a pair out, in this particular case there were 3. One was probably an inadvertent catch. But we're not going to take a chance on him becoming an alpha later. We were successful. Okay, well, just real quick to touch on that, we were successful. We had a guy in one of the villages call up and say that he got attacked by 2 coyotes at midnight. He went out on his deck to have a cigarette, and the 2 coyotes attacked him. Well, I got there probably in an hour, and I was able to get his shirt that he was wearing with the bite marks in it. So we were able to take the shirt, and we sent it out here to University of California. We got the DNA lifted off it, and the DNA came back domestic dog. Now, this guy, maybe it wasn't his fault. Who knows how many he had or what kind of smoke he was going to have when he went out. I don't know. But the bottom line is this guy thought that he actually got attacked by coyotes. Now, 2 weeks later, a couple of stray Akitas were picked up 2 blocks from his house. Now, did he know anything about wildlife? Maybe not. Maybe that's the reason he really thought there were coyotes. I don't know. I can't answer that question. But the bottom line is they were actually getting blamed for something they didn't do, and we have the ability now with today's science to go ahead and take that DNA. If you're a village and you have a problem with coyotes and you take that DNA, you can, let's say a kid gets bitten. Now, all the villages that we contract with that are linked to the website, all the police officers are instructed to use rape kits and take DNA like they would if there was ever a child attack, to take DNA, because then we could definitively tell you we got the coyote that did it. We can do that. You can do that with DNA. Now, yes, well, you might catch coyotes in between and it might be the same ones. Well, that could be. But from a village standpoint and a liability standpoint, wouldn't you think that the village would say, well, you should have done something because we had another bite last week. Well, you know what? We know that we caught the coyote that did that attacked the child because we have DNA to absolutely irrefutable evidence that says this was the one that did it. Now, if another one did it, that's fine and dandy. You can't change that. But if you have DNA proof that you got the coyote that caused the problem, then I think from a liability point, the village would be pretty happy to know that. Okay, putting the pieces of the puzzle together. we try to log, we weigh them, we measure them, we take blood, we do everything that we need to do to get all the information that we can. We necropsy. Every animal that we euthanize is necropsy. Every one. Mostly we're looking for stuff in the intestinal tract. We're looking for dog food, cat food, pork chops, everything that we can find that could be a possibility that could cause a problem. Habituated animals, this is something that's really kind of a touchy subject for some people. They might look like they're in good shape, but they have tests have shown that they're getting high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and high tooth decay from eating the same things we are. In our area, this is one of the things this is one of the real pet peeves that, and might not make any difference here at all, because you guys might not have the high incidence of heartworm. But in our area, over 40% of those animals are infected with heartworm. Now, when you're going to haze an animal that might look perfectly fine, and that animal's heart is engulfed with heartworm, and he can't run to get out of the way, I'm sorry, but I think that's an accident waiting to happen. That might not be the same here. It might not be the same in Colorado. I don't know. But I can tell you that definitively, over 40% of our animals have heartworm. So that's real important. That's why I'm real nervous about having somebody trying to, bang pots and pans or yell at them and run at them, and this animal can't run away. We did catch one animal that was laying on a porch after he killed the cat, and when we did the necropsy on that animal, his heart was so full of heartworm, he couldn't have ran from here to the wall if he tried. Okay, we always, when we're doing this, especially in the springtime, we examine the uterus for each one of these black dots represents a pup. So what does that do for us? There's 6 on here. What that does is tells us, okay, if we do have to take the whole family out, we're not looking for 7 pups. Maybe all 6 didn't live, but we're not looking for 7. So that's why we do that. This is wonderful. This is bok choy. This is cut carrots. This is little mini corn. And, this guy ate at the Chinese restaurant. So this was on Friday night, and we need to know either who's giving him Chinese food or is the Chinese place throwing the food in the dump? Whatever, we don't know. But this is what when we find this stomach contents of an urban coyote, we're alarmed. And you can certainly see why. Again, hazing hasn't worked for us at all. And I think that's because half the people want to feed them, and we can't stop that, and the other half want them dead. So it's like in the middle. I have tried to teach people not to feed. I've done everything in my power until I'm blue in the face, and I've had elderly women just tell me where to get off, and I tell them what they should know. I'll maybe give them a handout, and that's as far as I can go. I can't continually preach and preach and preach because I'm preaching to the choir. They're not going to change. They don't want to change. Okay, this is one of our favorite things. We had a mayor say, coyotes are no problem. Shake a can of pennies at them because as soon as you make noise, they're going to run away. Okay, this coyote was an adult male. 3 days after this video, he killed 2 dogs. But what's funny about this, I don't know, I wish I could turn the volume up. But this particular animal was a little unusual because, as you're going to see, this guy was a little bit nervous. He's the commercial landscaper with a 60-inch Briggs & Stratton cut mower, and the coyote runs right at him. So looking big and making noise really didn't seem to do too much to this coyote. So was he curious to the noise? I don't know what to tell you. But 3 days later, this coyote did kill some dogs. And when we took him, actually this particular coyote, because of the area that surrounds him, was pretty rich in venison. There were a lot of deer around, so he didn't have any commercial food he didn't have any domestic food in his stomach, or in his intestinal tract. And he was actually a very healthy animal, no heartworm at all. Some parasites, but the parasite load wasn't unusual. But, if you're going to try to make noise and look big, and this is a result you're going to get, I think we've got some issues here. So, you see what I mean? Can you make any more noise than a Briggs & Stratton with a 60-inch cut? And then he goes right back to the kids' area where the next house over is where the dogs were killed. So, anyway, any questions?